So I wanted to say hi to you. My name's Kristen Sanchez. I am a librarian here at EPCC, and today we're going to be talking about careers in libraries. So I know we have some librarians, and some library staff in the room with us. So if you have anything to add, please feel free to do so. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer it as we go along. So either just turn on your microphone and ask, or just raise your hand down at the bottom. So when you get ready to start talking about careers in libraries, I'm very passionate about libraries. I love them. I've been a librarian for 22 years now, and I've worked public, I've worked academic, and I'm currently working on starting some archives as well. So I'm really happy to be talking about this topic. And as I said, if you have questions, please jump in. Okay. All right, so our first slide is going to ask you, when you think of librarians, what do you think that they do? So some of the comments that I've received over the past is, I would love to read all day like you do, which I wish was true, but that's absolutely not true. I hardly read at all anymore because we're so busy with other things that we do here at the library, and that is not one of our job duties. A lot of people think we're just here to maintain quiet and order, and that is one thing, is we do want to make sure that it's quiet in the library, but hopefully we're not just going around saying. That's what a lot of people have us as a preconceived notion. They say it's just a relaxing job, just checking out books or putting books on the shelf. And that is part of the duties of working in libraries, is to make sure everything is put orderly and to make sure everything is available on the shelf. But it's not what everything that we do. And it's also a safe place, which is actually true, where I can ask for help. And a lot of people will come to the library when they're lost, whether it's public, school, academic, any library, because ever since they've been kids, they've always seen the library as a safe space. And I think that's a really good thought to have about libraries, because we like to be seen that way as well. So some stereotypes of librarians: very introverted. We dress drably with a bun, glasses, and sweater. You've seen a lot of photos, or maybe something in the movies or in TV, or the Halloween costumes. That's usually how they're depicted. Or we're characterized just by being surrounded by stacks and stacks of books. Or we're scary because we keep our patrons in fear of us. Or sometimes they'll say, "Oh, librarians, they're so smart, they know everything." And we do know, a lot of things, but we don't know everything. And what the great thing about being a librarian is, you know where to go look for it. So that is what mostly librarians are able to do, is to go and find that information for you. So here's some people that you may have seen in movies. So there was a librarian in Ghostbusters. I was going to put all the photos, but I didn't want to have to worry about copyright rules, so I'm just going to talk to you about them. There's a librarian in Ghostbusters that had a panic attack because she saw a ghost in the library, a ghost of an old haggly looking librarian. Batgirl, which is pretty cool, is a librarian, Barbara Gordon. So she is depicted as being this, bookish looking girl with her glasses, and then she turns into Batgirl when she's needed. There's also a character in Monsters University. It's a cartoon character named Margaret Gessner, and she's an octopus who's going to attack anyone who makes too much noise. And then she tosses them into the pond in front of the library. In Matilda, the librarian is depicted as helping Matilda when she sees her coming every day, helping her to get a library card so she doesn't have to walk to the library every day, and showing her where other books are that she can take home. So she's shown in the role of being very helpful, which is a good depiction. And then in The Mummy, what's known about Evelyn Carnahan is her quote, where she is telling Mr. O'Connell, "Look, I may or may not be an explorer, an adventurer, or a treasure seeker, or a gunfighter, Mr. O'Connell, but I am proud of what I am." And he says, "What is that?" She says, "I am a librarian." And so I like to think that way too. I'm really proud of being a librarian also. So welcome to all of you. Hopefully, like I said, if y'all have any questions, please let me know. I really want to make sure that anything is answered, or if you have other things to add, because maybe some of our librarians in here have worked in some of these different types of libraries. I think one of the only ones I haven't done is schools. So maybe you can chime in if there's something that I've left out. So what do librarians do? So first and foremost, I like to think we help. Whatever the question or need, we try to help people find a solution, whether it's technology related or some information need they may have, or maybe they're trying to find something like here at El Paso Community College, you may find something on campus, like who's your counselor, or how do I find this building? So they can be ranging from the most simple questions to the most, complicated research questions. And also we can look to see if we have resources we can refer people to get help. So if we can't help you, we know maybe someone who can, and we can call around and see if we can get that referral for you. We also like to promote literacy, right? That's one thing associated with libraries is reading, but it's not just that, but a lot of people don't know how to read. And I was looking at some various quotes, and people try to associate quotes about reading with prisons. And I wasn't able to really find something concrete about that. But to see that there is a literacy link between possibilities of not succeeding in life and reading skills is just enough to make you want to ensure that people have those skills as they go on from being the most smallest patron that we get at the libraries until they're launched out into their careers. So that's the importance of reading, is it's a possibility that it could lead them to better paying jobs, a better life, more skills. So that is one of the goals, is to promote literacy and also to teach what's known as information literacy skills. So what is that? That means we teach how to find that information, how to get to the library catalog or into the journals, magazines, newspapers, or the internet. How to get in there and actually find things and evaluate that it's actually a good source. There's so many things, as people were saying, fake news out in the world. So we really want to make sure that what you're finding is helpful to you, and to make sure it meets the needs of your assignments or whatever it is you're looking for information on, and then how to use and create information from that. Like, do you have to write a paper? Do you have to make a presentation? Or is it just for you to use, for out in your personal life? We also select and purchase books, magazines, journals, any other resources, both either in print or now online, to meet the needs of those who we're serving. So, depending on your library, your audiences are different. So, if I work in a public library, it's anyone who walks in those doors from the public. That could be a city library, a county library, and usually you can get people from all walks of life in all of these libraries. You might be helping students. You might work in a hospital or a law firm or some type of agency. Even the FBI and CIA hire librarians. So librarians can be found in all sorts of different places. And depending on where they work, they select and purchase materials based on what their need is there at that facility. You also will order, receive, catalog, organize. It depends on your library, because a lot of times if you have a very small library and it's not much staff, you do everything. You're a one woman show, a one man show, and you do everything from the start to the end. You could also work in a giant library where you hardly ever do all of those things. You might order only, or you might catalog only, or organize, but you don't do all of them. So it depends very distinctly on where you work and how big it is. And so we also remove all those items when they start getting outdated, so you can get newer things and newer information. Make sure you're not getting bad information from old resources. So other things that we do, we can help our patrons conduct research and evaluate their search results. So that's one of the main duties at libraries, is to help people find information and make sure, like I said, it was good information. We also create things to put information on, like websites, so make it easier for you to go in there and find that information, or to have what's known as a research guide, which is where we put all sorts of different resources on a particular topic or a particular issue together, so you can just go to a one-stop shop place and you can find those guides that have books and articles and videos and anything on there, all in one place, to help guide you to some information sources. We also plan programs and exhibits to inform you of different events or to promote like celebrations like March is Women's Month. We celebrate that. Black History Month was last month. We celebrate different topics, current events that are going on. Like if it's an election year, we might talk about voting and also celebrate, the different holidays. So we try to promote all of these different things to inform you about what's going on. If it's the 100th anniversary of something, or it's to keep you informed. We also try to keep up to date with technology and, if possible, purchase and set it up for our patrons to use and learn. So there's like 3D printers. There's all sorts of equipment. There's makerspace equipments within libraries. There's computers, printers, and a lot of times people don't know how to use a computer, just even the basics of how to print or use a copy machine. Or if you have to go into some older research, maybe even some microfilm or microfiche, even that kind of technology is still being used. And so, most important of all, librarians advocate. If something is going on that is not appropriate, like someone is trying to ban books or someone is asking us to censor books in our collection, we advocate for why that is wrong and why we should protect the rights for our books to be on the shelf, and to protect the rights of our patrons so they have the right to read materials that some other people might say don't belong on the shelves. So that is part of duties of a librarian, is to advocate for different causes, and also protect the privacy of our patrons. When 9/11 happened, they put out the Patriot Act, where they wanted to be able to see what people were reading, to see if anyone was looking at materials that might possibly lead them to believe they're a terrorist. And so librarians at the time also fought for the safety of the privacy of our patrons. So those are some things. Also, when they want to filter our internet and say that you can't look at certain websites, those are some other issues that librarians have fought against as well. So as you can see, librarians do a lot of different types of things, and if you're not familiar with libraries, you may not have even known that those are part of what is done. Yeah, thank you, Patricia. So, different types of librarians. So, there are different types of libraries. So, you've got your public library, that's the one most people are familiar with. You also have your school librarians, your academic librarian, which is different than being a school librarian. You're talking higher education for academic librarians, a special librarian, technical services librarians, and archivists. So I'm going to go through these. And if you'll notice, I'm number one rule of PowerPoint is don't put a lot of information. Well, I broke every rule today. So you're going to see slides just filled with information, because I love libraries and I love to talk. So that's a bad mix together on a PowerPoint. So here we go. So public librarian, most of the time this position will work at the city or county government. You are usually funded by taxpayers, and they'll let you know that too sometimes if they come in. They're like, you work for me. And yes, you in effect do work for the city or the county government. And so you are working to ensure that your collection meets the needs of the community. Okay, your positions there, they have a lot of different departments within these public libraries, and they meet the needs of a lot of different groups. So, for example, you have adult services, where you provide resources and programming and exhibits and events for adults. You have children's and young adults. Same thing, you provide programming and events and things for those age groups and resources. And you have outreach, you have what's known as makerspace, where you could have sewing, you could have the 3D printing. They have all sorts of neat devices that you can use and learn how to use in the library, including Legos. Programming, such as, you can have an event. When I worked at the public library, I was in charge of adult programming. So I would do like movie celebrations. I would bring people in from the Holocaust Museum. I would bring in people from different agencies within El Paso to come and talk about what they do. And so that's what you're trying to do, is to inform people and to also let them know about other things out in your community that are available to them. Other positions in a public library can be cataloging, electronic resources, you could be a webmaster, and even more. And so in the public library, you're going to serve all age ranges. They say from cradle to grave, so it's birth to elderly. You'll provide a lot of reference assistance. You'll get a lot of questions, probably virtual now, but as well as on the phone. They'll call and ask you, could you give me the name of or the phone number to a company that, they'll give you the name. Like someone asked me about Welch's grape jelly. They wanted the company name. Or can you tell me who produces the most avocados in California? They wanted very specific questions, and that's something that you will get a lot of at the public library are these types of reference questions where people will call and ask you. A lot of people now have computers, but you still have a lot of people who don't know how to use them to look up this information and they'll call you. You will also have a lot of resources, both print and online, and provide access to technology such as computers and printers. They also will have a lot of additional tools depending on the library. So they will also, like I said, provide exhibits on different topics and programming of interest to the community. So as a librarian, you're responsible for looking at who you serve. Who is your group that you serve? And that is where you target what you do, purchasing books and resources or providing these types of programs and exhibits. And so in some libraries, they offer citizenship classes, basic computer skills. They bring in authors or guest lecturers. They have things like resume building, job searching, even sewing, and more. And then for children, they'll have story time, they'll have crafts, games, they'll have technology, even summer reading programs. And those programs can offer events like, people in there teaching about music or math or even providing exercise. And they'll have different types of events throughout the year as well, not just during the summer. And I know from working at the public library, they're very popular to bring kids in on the weekends and to bring in adults. And I know that it was interesting because at the public library, from the children's events, they would provide food. They would provide, little snacks, like some fruit or some cookies and things. And some of the parents told the children's librarian at the time, she goes, I bring my children here because sometimes this was all we had to eat today. So you have a lot of people from different economic classes that come to the library, and that is their source of coming to get information. That's where they get their resources. They're not buying books, they're not reading them on their phone. They're coming to the library and getting those tools so that they can take it home and use that information. So that's something very important as a public librarian is to keep in mind that you are their information source. And so there's a lot of responsibility with that. You want to make sure that you're providing the needs of your public. And you can also work together with your community to build your collection. And then, like I said, provide programming. So some of the libraries here in the county as well as in the city is the El Paso Public Library and the El Paso County Digital Library. If you haven't heard of that, it's a really neat new library that provides all digital resources. You can get online and get your card online by providing them, I think, a picture of your driver's license, and they'll send you login information, and you have access to movies and books all online. It's called the El Paso County Digital Library, and it's pretty new. It's about a year old, I believe. So it's really neat to see. So now I'm going to move into school librarians. And I know there's a couple people that have been school librarians. So if I say something or I forget to say something, please let me know. So this position could be called a library media specialist rather than school librarian only. It's going to be working within the K through 12 schools, and some schools also have Head Starts and pre-K, so their possibility also being served. And these are both public and private schools. So you're going to be working with students that are within these grade levels, and you're going to be promoting reading and learning. And you're going to be teaching, like I said, once you teach people, that hopefully will help them become lifelong readers or learn these skills for life so they know how to get into it and how to find these resources once you start teaching them. And so you also will be working with students, not only with teaching them about the library and providing them how to research, you also may have makerspace also media production. I saw a library recently where the students did their announcements in the library, and they had a podcasting room set up with cameras and a Mac computer and a green screen. It was awesome. And the students were in there having fun and making their announcements and learning at the same time how to use all of this equipment to produce this video. There's library clubs and there's all sorts of programming that is offered. And sometimes the programming is also offered to families. Sometimes they will stay after in the evenings and have computer classes for parents or again, citizenship or anything that might be needed. I know some libraries in the schools also serve the public in some places. And I forgot to mention back on the public library at EPCC, one of our libraries out in Northwest also has a public library within it. It is the Jenna Welch and Laura Bush Community Library within the Northwest Campus Library. So that's another public library accessible to you. So school librarians do everything. Like I said, it's a one-person show from selection and ordering to cataloging, shelving. They do have technical services at the main districts, but a lot of times you have to do some of this yourself as well. Cataloging and shelving, you have to check them out, which is called circulation. So if you're not familiar with terms in the libraries, which I wasn't when I became a librarian, I didn't know what circulation meant. That is where you circulate the items. You check them out, you check them in, you renew them, talk to them about fines. That's circulation. Teaching, managing students, creating lesson plans for multiple grade levels. You have programs, like I said, for students and their families sometimes. Distribute technology during COVID. I know a lot of teachers did help with that. They were out in the parking lot handing out laptops and iPads and getting everybody set up to go online. You collaborate with teachers, you help with curriculum development. And what's really, I think, not understood well is that school librarians are certified teachers. They've been teachers and then they get their certification to become a librarian. So they are certified teachers first and then they become school librarians. So I know I've seen some interviews during the shutdown on Post where we've had some shortages and a parent was upset that they let a librarian teach a class. They're like, they even pulled in a librarian to teach. Well, my goodness, they are teachers. So they are certified teachers before they even become a librarian. So that is something to know if you're interested in becoming a school librarian. They select library resources based on the curriculum that they support and teacher and student needs and interests. And also, they are guided by their school district's policy. Okay. So part of their job, and probably the majority of their job, is to teach the students. It is a school. They're supposed to teach them how to access, evaluate, and use library resources and information. And they will also teach about online safety, the parts of a book. I mean, they teach everything about the resources. And so the students have the ability to learn from kindergarten all the way through high school different things as they move along in the curriculum. What about different types of research? You know, they start off with story time and reading, and then they move up through using the internet or the resources they have for them online to find research all the way through high school research. And then they do, you know, book readings at night. They have events, parent teacher nights. They have all sorts of things just like anyone else that works in the school. Okay. And so, of course, you have your major districts, EPISD, YISD, SISD, and you have private schools as well. The requirements, like I said, are to be a certified teacher and 2 years of experience prior to becoming a librarian. You have to get a master's degree in anything according to the state of Texas. And then you get through a library, school librarian certificate as well. So your master might be in libraries with a school certification focus, or they have programs where you can get your master's degree in anything and then you can go through a librarian certificate program as well. So just depending on where you want to work, you'll want to look and see what they require. Okay, but that is the state of Texas. Private schools may have different requirements depending on the school. Okay, academic, and you can see this is my world. That's why my slide is so full. So I'm sorry for that, but I will get through it. So this position usually will work for a college or a university. Okay, so you're talking freshman all the way through PhD levels. Okay, and depending on the institution, what levels they offer. So just like at El Paso Community College, we offer coursework within high schools as well. And so they're considered freshmen, but they are ninth and 10th grade students. So they're younger than a typical freshman at the age of 18, but they are also our college students as well. So we serve students, we serve staff, faculty, and also members of the community as well. And we have a large focus on the curriculum, just like school libraries. We want to support what the students are studying and the needs of their classes, the needs of their faculty and staff. We support that with our resources. We also provide library instruction on how to access and use those resources and also for them to learn how to research. Again, that's the goal, is to teach people how to do this so that they're able to do it in any situation, whether they're in a library or not. They know how to look at research, they know how to conduct research, and they know if it's good information or not. Okay. We also collaborate with faculty to provide classes. We may provide consultations for students and faculty when they're doing research or their assignments. They come to us and we meet with them one-on-one, so they can get more hands-on and more direct help for whatever it is that they're learning or trying to research. So we do have academic librarians that are specialists. So before you become a librarian, you do get a bachelor's degree in something, and you may have a career prior to becoming a librarian, or you have a focus with your degree that you earned as your bachelor's. And so some of these librarians become specialists in certain fields, such as business, engineering, psychology, health, and more. Some have a language degree, so that helps them with books as well as like being a history degree. There you go. That's awesome. And so there are specialists so that when someone has a question related to engineering, having that person who's familiar with engineering topics or resources is very important so that they are able to guide that person to the correct resources rather than someone who, may not have as much information about that career or that discipline. They can still help. We all have the basic knowledge on how to get started and how to do things. But those specialists, that's what they do. So they are very well utilized at universities and colleges. And also, if you're a specialist, you will usually meet with the faculty that your specialty is in, and you will work with that department to help build up resources that are in that field as well. So it's a really neat specialty, but you don't have to have a specialty. There's people that just provide general reference as well, and that's very needed. And like I said, if I'm at the reference desk and someone asks me a business question, I can answer it also. It's just that when they get, into their PhD level, sometimes they'll need somebody with a little bit more information as to their degree. It can be helpful for them to find additional resources. We also provide exhibits. We create handouts. We have programming. When you work at a college, sometimes you are provided tenure or tenure track status, which means you're on track as a faculty member of the college. You are a member of the faculty. So that's really nice. You get to serve on committees. You work as part of the college environment. You help with events, if they have events going on, you can be part of it. You can help plan these events. You do professional development and conferences, as do school librarians as well. Faculty also may research and publish that research. If you work at some universities on tenure track, some of them require you to do that. They require you to conduct research and publish your research. And some institutions do require a second master's degree in addition to your master's in library science. Um, so some of the local institutions here that are academic librarians would be El Paso Community College, UTEP, and Texas Tech. So we also have something called special librarians, and I like to think all librarians are special and all library staff is special. But a special librarian is a librarian who works in a specialized environment. So you not working in a library as such, your library is within another organization. So you might be in the hospital, you might be in a law office or in a court. You might be in a museum or business. Government agencies, like I mentioned earlier, the FBI and CIA do hire librarians, as do the Library of Congress, as does the Veterans Health Affairs. The military, the Army hires librarians, as does Air Force, Navy. There's presidential libraries, newspapers, news agencies, churches, organizations, and nonprofits. So there's a lot of places where they hire librarians. And so depending on where you work, you are going to have different job responsibilities. It just depends on where you work and what is your purpose. What are you trying to serve? So for example, if you work for a news agency, I have a friend that worked for the History Channel. You know, she was responsible for obtaining those film reels that they needed and for doing the research to find some of these things that they needed for production. Um, sorry, let me go back a step, hit my slide. If you work in a hospital, you might be working with patients and their family members. You might be working with nurses and doctors, trying to find research for them. For patients and their families, you might be helping them find resources. You might be helping them find some information about their diagnosis or some of their different things that happen. If you work in a law office, you would be looking at legal cases that people are working on. You're trying to find research for that as well. So you can even work for companies that deal with stocks. You know, sometimes people would call and ask about their stocks. When I worked at the public library, they wanted to have some stock information on their stocks. Well, people who work in stocks also will need different types of research as well. So depending on where you work, you might be working with maps, you might be working with government documents, which is a whole nother type of organization and numbering system. You might be working in a museum. So we have the Holocaust Museum, we have museums of art, you even have fashion museums where you might be responsible for some of the fashions and taking care of those as well. So there's a lot of different places you can work. And what makes it nice to be a specialized librarian, there's a lot of places. I know the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was hiring at one point. So there's a lot of neat places that hire. And so, as I mentioned already, I'm sorry, my slide cut off at the bottom. The FBI, CIA, you have the El Paso Museum of Art. You have the El Paso Holocaust Museum, the El Paso Times. They have a librarian. You've seen her in the newspaper when she has her historical articles sometimes. So there's a lot of places you can work. And then there's what's called technical services librarians. And these librarians are the spine of the libraries. They're the backbone because they're the ones that make the systems work. They're the ones that we can buy all the books we want, but if you can't find them, what's the point? If you can't see them in the computers or you can't see them when you try to access them, it doesn't work with your username and password or whatever you use. What's the point? So they're the ones that keep us going. They're the technical services team. So you'll have possibly a systems librarian that makes sure what's known as your catalog and the integrated library system, which is where they put all the information that you see on the catalog in there, that it's up and running and it's working. So that is their job as systems librarian, is to make sure that everything is entered into the system, that the patrons are encoded correctly, the checkout dates, other fields that are in there, you know, what is your patron type, get into reports, and they're the contact with our IT department. So they're the ones that do all the computer setup for this, for the libraries. They're the system. They make sure it's all integrated into the computer. Our electronic resources librarians are the ones that they help purchase and license these online resources, such as databases, which are magazines, journals, and newspapers, videos, and electronic books. And they work together with the systems librarian, or in most cases, they are the systems librarian as well, and make sure that they are properly working in the system. And if someone says they're having trouble accessing something, they're the ones that are troubleshooting what's going on, and they're working together with IT and the library staff and the person having problems, trying to ensure it's working. And then they even contact the vendors to see what's going on with the product, or if there's a way they can fix it. So that's it's not new. It's becoming more and more prevalent, and these are some of the jobs that you're going to see the most when you're looking for jobs in libraries, is electronic resources or some type of computer component to your library position. They're the most popular right now. And then catalogers. So they're knowledgeable about everything about putting these items. They know about authority control, rules, subject headings, mark records, classification system. They're the ones that describe the books. They're the ones that give it what you might know as the Dewey Decimal Call system for public libraries. There's also the Library of Congress system. Like I told you about the government documents, they have their own classification system. So they're the ones that are knowledgeable about all of that, about how to describe what subjects these materials are. So what is the point of that? It's so that you're able to find it when you go into a system and you put in your words looking for items. What they put in is what comes up. So if you put in a word, say, I want to find a book about basketball, it's going to look for all the items that are described that has the word basketball in it. And they're the ones that are responsible for putting that in for every single item we have. And librarians can have millions of items, and they're responsible for them. Something goes wrong, it's not working, it's not showing, they have to work on that and see what's going on. And they work together with their systems librarian and electronic resource librarian to make it work. They catalog, is what it's called, from existing records. So there's already records that other libraries have put out there, and they can do what they call copy cataloging and use those too. Or if there's not any, let's say someone local created a book and we bought a copy, maybe there's nothing in there and they have to do something called original cataloging, where they have to start from scratch and make it happen. So this process is very unique and it's very specific, and it's called cataloging. Okay. And so they process everything for the libraries and they make them available and findable. And in this department, they may supervise all the staff that makes purchases, receives, and pay out the invoices. They process the books, they put all the labels and the protective covers, the stamps, the security devices. It's a lot. And so this is the behind the scenes, but libraries wouldn't work without them. And then we're down to archivists now. So what does an archivist do? So an archivist is someone who, they take care of the records of people, organizations like community organizations or communities of people, um, universities, government institutions, anyone that generates some kind of record. So if you belong to a club and you have documents and you have records that you make, your minutes of your meetings and things, those are records. And so it's the archivist who collects these records and makes sure that they keep them so that they're going to last a long time. And now they're even digitizing some of them so that you can go online and you can see them. And they can be books, they can be photographs, even scrapbooks, films, postcards, artwork, clothing. It depends on your archive. So each archive has a goal. So like I said, there is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They have archivists. There's presidential libraries. They have archivists. So they're in charge of whatever is the goal of that institution, they're in charge of those records. And they process them, they put them in some kind of order so that you're able to find things, and they make it usable so that you go and you can find it when you go, so that you're not just walking in and they said, okay, you can look at all of these boxes to see what you can find. They make lists of materials so that you'll know where to start and you'll be able to find it easier. So they work with researchers to help them make these collections work better. And they also work to help describe those collections. So you can imagine working in a huge university, you might get a lot of different types of records from, let's just say, El Paso, that you're not familiar with. Maybe you don't know anything about banking. Maybe you don't know anything about, let's just say, the railroads. That was one of their collections here. So you might work with people who are from those fields to help you understand what you're looking at so that you'll be able to describe them properly. You might also work with some community organizations that in the past maybe haven't been treated so well. So what they'll do now is they'll invite members of the community to come in and help you to make sure that what you're showing is accurate, and it's a good representation of the records. So for example, when we've talked about some indigenous tribes in the past, a lot of times people would get, 30, 40 years ago, records and photographs of maybe some sacred ceremonies, and they would just put them on display without a thought. And now it's become more aware that, what, let's invite these indigenous tribes to come in and talk to us about these photos. Are these photos something that should be put out on display? Are they even something we should have possession on? Because some of these sacred ceremonies are not supposed to be shown in public, but someone took photos of them. So those are some things as librarians and archivists that we are being made aware of to make sure that we provide good access to everyone, regardless of all walks of life. Okay, and those can be found, archivists found everywhere: universities, colleges, organizations, special libraries, museums, public, everywhere. We're everywhere. So, what are some good personality traits? So, let's talk about that to see if libraries would be a good fit for you. Because there's so many of them, you can find somewhere you'd like. So if you enjoy working with people, and even if you don't, there's behind the scenes jobs. We're talking about cataloging, technical services. They do deal with people, they deal with vendors, they deal with this, but they don't deal with the public as much as, let's just say, a reference librarian does, or an school or academic librarian does. If you're investigative, you like to research and search for answers and see if you can find things, that's a good personality trait. If you like technology and learning about all the newest things available out there and creating social media, things like that, that's a good role for you as well. There are social media librarians as well. If you love children and teens, you like craft, storytelling, you want to build exhibits and programs, they have that for children, teens, and adults. So those are some positions that you can find. If you like working in education, so you want to teach classes and help students, what grade level would you be interested in? Would you be more likely to want to become a teacher and then a librarian? Or would you like to be working at higher education? What is your background? Looking at your background, if you have a science background, you could work in a special library, maybe that works at Los Alamos National Laboratory, or you can look at health. Maybe you want to work in a medical facility or a law library. Okay, in some law libraries, you are required to be a lawyer as well as a librarian. So those are some things that you'll need to look into before you decide where you want to go. What you want to work with historical photographs or items. Maybe you want to be an archivist. And so many types of libraries, all backgrounds are helpful, no matter what. Even if you're wanting to be a reference librarian, if you have a background in art, that's fantastic because there's art collections. So you may want to help build up that area in the library. If you studied music, there's music librarians. So there's all sorts of careers available to you. What kind of work environment are you going to have? So it's a lot of computer use. Okay, so it used to be not as much computer use because they just weren't as prevalent. But now with computers, it is a lot of computer use, and you need to have good communication skills no matter where you work, oral, written, and virtual. You have to be able to communicate virtually as well. Um, Many provide reference in person, or you could be virtual. They do have virtual remote working librarians. And also, you can work via email, phone, chat. You will be required to sit, stand, bend, lift. You will have carts that you push, books that you lift. You stoop down, you sit. You will mostly be indoors. I mean, you may have times where you'll be outdoors at events and things, but most of the time you're indoors. And temperatures always seem to be on the cold side in libraries. So, always that's a lot of reason why you'll see librarians wearing sweaters. It's just because it's cold. Noise levels depend. You know, you might have a large children's section where there's always activity, or you may have a place where it needs to be quiet because students are studying. It just depends. And you may have angry patrons and patrons with mental disorders that you deal with. So that is just a part of pretty much anywhere you work now, anywhere, even retail. And like I said, you do serve patrons from all walks of life. So, you know, that's a nice thing too, is you get to meet a lot of different people. So what is the outlook? So right now there's over 117,000 libraries in the US and 138,400 librarians. So it looks like there's one per library almost, but so that's what the numbers were from 2021. And it's expected that there's going to be 14,900 new positions each year for the next 10 years. So that's a lot of growth right there. Okay. So Texas is second highest in the nation for the number of librarians that we have. We're in between New York and California at 9,760. And when I did a search yesterday on Indeed, there were 2,011 job openings for librarians on Indeed nationwide. I think in El Paso we had 3 openings that are there, but I don't think they include the school districts on Indeed. I think it's just public and county. So that's not bad to have 3. And salary for nation, median pay is 61,190 per year or 29.42 an hour. And that is pretty much on par with what the Texas averages were. The national one is pretty much what Texas said we get. And then on average, it starts at 47,009 all the way through 77,004. And so depending on where you work, there's different salary levels. School libraries pay very well because you've already been a teacher, and the schools do pretty well. Public library, you start off librarian, you can become an assistant branch manager, you can become a branch manager, directors. There's all sorts of growth where you can move up into management positions. So that's anywhere you are. So how do you become a librarian? So most librarian positions are going to require a master's degree from an American Library Association accredited school. Usually degrees are called MLIS, which is a Master of Library and Information Studies, or MLS, which is a Master's of Library Science. Some now degrees, they're called Information Studies degrees. So you might see an MSIS or something like that. So some schools are now calling them information schools because they are looking at us as the finders of information and creators of information. So you'll see that some schools have now become information schools instead of library schools. So, and the requirement for the master's degree does depend on your state as well as the size of your library. So if you have a very small community library, they may or may not require you to have a master's degree. They may say you need a bachelor's degree and whatever. So you really need to look at the job openings to see what they are. For school librarians in Texas, like I said, you do have to have a teaching certificate with 2 years of teaching experience and then a master's degree in any field. Then you complete the state approved program in librarianship. You need to look at the schools to ensure their requirements. And then you have to take in Texas what is known as the TEXES, the Texas Certification Exam for Librarian Certification. Some private schools, as I mentioned, may have different requirements. And like I mentioned, also some schools will require you to have a second master's degree in addition to your librarian degree. So basically what I recommend is start looking at job openings at places you would like to work and see what they require. What is it? You know, I want to be a librarian at Google. What do they require? You know, that way you can see how to get started. So there's 3 schools in Texas. There's many programs in the U.S., but in Texas, you have UT Austin, University of North Texas, which does have an online option, and Texas Women's University, which also has an online option. I did not see an online option for UT Austin. I don't know if it still exists. Used to, but from what I saw, I did not see an online option. So you may have to dig into that a little more. There are some schools outside of Texas that have online programs as well. So even though you're living here, you might be able to partake in their online programs. So here's a link. It's not like that you could use to go to the ALA website and look at the different schools they have. So there's other jobs in libraries too, where you work as a team to keep libraries running smoothly, and librarians is just one part of that team. So the other career opportunities in libraries could be you could be a cataloging assistant, an imaging specialist, you could work as library acquisition specialists, library assistants and clerks, library customer service specialists, information services specialists, literacy coordinators. The public library now assists with passports, which is very specific because there's a lot of rules from the government regarding that. So they do have library passport services assistants, and they do have library services supervisors. So, like I said, depending on your library, these are some potential jobs that you could see, and they require different things. So, look for those jobs and see what the requirements are. It could be an associate's degree, it could be a bachelor's degree, it could be just some basic college credits. So, look and see what the requirements are. And here's a list of resources. Occupational Outlook Handbook and Career One Stop go for any career that's out there. The American Library Association, School Association of School Librarians, Special Libraries Associations, and Associations of College and Research Libraries, as well as the Society of American Archivists, all are associations for those particular types of librarians, and they're very important to join so that you can get information about what's going on in the field. They also provide job and career help. So it's always good if you're a student going to school to get your library degree to join an association of where you hope to end up. So that way you'll be able to get scholarships. You can join as a student a lot cheaper than you can once you graduate. So it's a good time to take an opportunity to join them. Locally, we have Border Regional Library Association, we have Reforma, we also have the Texas Library Association. So these are some places you can also get some assistance. So I've talked quite a bit. I had my huge slides. Do you all have any questions or anything to add? Because there's a lot of librarians in here and library staff. So if I left anything out, please let me know so that we can make sure everyone has all the information. And I'm going to put in the chat, don't forget you're going to get Tejano passport points. So make sure that you do that if you haven't taken advantage of our Tejano passport program. Yeah, we do have a president of BRLA here with us today, which is the Border Regional Library Association, Blake Clemasara, who works for El Paso Community College at the Northwest Campus. So there are a lot of great opportunities for you here for libraries. All right, so I gave you the Tejano passport points. So if you wouldn't mind filling that out. And then I'm also going to put a link. I'm looking at when we talk about careers. Here at EPCC, we are focusing on sharing different careers so that you can look at different career paths you can go on. And so there is a little survey that I'm putting in the chat box about the presentation today, if you wouldn't mind taking that survey. That can be passed on to the people in the Quality Enhancement Plan program here at EPCC. So I thank you all for joining us. Next week, we are going to have a presentation on the 10th from the El Paso Community College Mental Health Committee at 1 o'clock, same place, same channel. So I hope to see you all next week, and I thank you all for coming.